Bring in Mairav Zonszein, a senior analyst at the International Crisis Group. You are joining us from Tel Aviv. Thank you for your time today. Look, this may sound like a naive question or worse. Is there any talk right now? Is there any realistic option for either ceasefire or diplomacy, whether it's in Lebanon alone or region-wide?
That's not something that we're hearing. It's not part of the discourse. But if you speak to Israeli officials, they'll tell you, some of them, that that is the objective on the northern border, that they are pushing right now to clear the area near the northern border where the residents have been displaced, and that the idea is to kind of get back to a diplomatic solution after having cleared out a lot of the weapons, and they've seen tunnels now going from Lebanon into Israel. So as far as Israel is concerned, the line is, yeah, eventually we'll try to get back to an agreement from a position of power. Now, whether or not that's true, I don't know, and we've been in this quagmire before, but potentially that is something that some Israeli officials have been talking about.
The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu presumably is still mulling his options when it comes to responding to Iran's missile attack. Do we know what he has to factor in as he makes his decision?
Well, I think he has a lot to factor in, but it's important to note that the October 1st ballistic missile attack by Iran on Israel was, I think, a lot more effective than maybe Israel and the U.S. have let on, or maybe that people realize. Of course, many of the missiles were intercepted, but a lot of them also went through. There was damage done to military bases, to houses, and of course, the psychological warfare of putting so many millions of Israelis into shelters. I think it really showed what Iran is capable of. And so I think Israel, in its response, is going to have to take that into account.
Okay, that's interesting. Can I pick you up on that? You're saying essentially, so because we're still doing the autopsy, really, of Iran's missile attack on Israel, and there are different theories about what it meant, what the real message was, what lessons we learned from it. And you're saying it wasn't just theater. It wasn't just Iran trying to show that it can send missiles, but really we don't want to take this further. You're saying it was very serious.
It was serious, and I think in a lot of cases, Israel was lucky that some of its bases and aircrafts weren't damaged. But clearly it overwhelmed Israel's defense system. The defense system cannot handle, I think, that many ballistic missiles at once. It was still, I guess, somewhat calculated. So I'm not an expert, but to me it seems like Iran was trying to both target military bases, knowing that they are also, some of them, in civilian areas, and to show that it has the capacity to do even more if it chooses.
How much coordination is likely to be happening between Israel and the U.S. over how Israel is going to respond?
Well, logic would say that Israel should be coordinating with the U.S., and logic would say that the U.S. would put certain brakes and leverage where it needs to on Israel. But since those things haven't necessarily been happening over the last year of war, it's hard to say for sure. But with reports of guerrilla coming to the region, the fact that I think Biden and Netanyahu haven't actually spoken on the phone yet since all of this has happened, since I think even the Nasrallah assassination, that means clearly that the professionals are still discussing what to do, and that eventually there will be a discussion to close out what the response is going to look like. But we know that Israel's capacity to attack nuclear facilities or oil facilities, I believe, is something that it cannot do without U.S. cooperation. So I would imagine that that is what is being discussed right now. But it's hard to know because you have an Israeli leader who is acting without any restraint, who is only interested in military force, and you have a U.S. president who has failed over and over and over again to put a stop to it, and in fact even aligned now with Israel's goals in Lebanon.
All right, Mairav Zonszein, and apologies, I believe I mispronounced your name earlier. Mairav Zonszein, senior analyst at the International Crisis Group, thank you very much for joining us.